I'm Julie Baumgardner, and this is the Marriage on the Daily podcast, the podcast designed to give you tools and encouragement to help you do married well on the daily. Because after all, it isn't the grand gestures that make or break your marriage. It's actually what you do or don't do on the daily that either builds a strong foundation or chips away at your core. You can do this, and I'm here to help. Welcome to the Marriage on the Daily podcast. I'm your host, Julie Baumgardner. Andrea Gurney is my guest today. She is a clinical psychologist and a professor at Westmont College. She lives in Santa Barbara, California with her husband, 2 daughters, and their golden doodle. She's been in practice for almost 3 decades, and we met at a conference last summer and became fast friends. I love the work that she's doing. And so I asked her to join me on the podcast, and Andrea, I'm so excited that you're here. It finally worked out.
I know. Well, thank you, Julie. I'm so excited to be here, and I couldn't agree more. It was like fast friends of how have I not known you for so much longer?
Exactly. We should have known each other for longer, but we're making up for lost time.
That's right.
So I am looking forward to you talking about all things attachment. I know that that's a really popular topic of conversation, and you have done a tremendous amount of work learning about it and teaching others. And so I want you to teach us today because I feel like it's very impactful to marriage.
Yes, I could not agree more. I am a big believer in attachment theory and the way our kind of early story and developmental history actually impacts the way we show up in our day-to-day intimate relationships. And a lot of people, some people could say, what? Well, what does it really matter, our attachment style that's like rooted back from when we were little kids? And why would that make a difference in my romantic life and in my love life? And I think, oh boy, we've got good stuff to talk
How long
about.
do you have?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So where do we start, Julie?
Yeah. I think so first of all, what I love about the conversations that I've had with you is you're very practical. So this isn't going to be boring by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to be highly relatable to anybody who's navigating a marriage relationship. So I think just maybe start out by talking with us about the attachment styles, and then we can move into how does this impact our marriage and what do we need to be paying attention to in order to build a really strong foundation in our marriage.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's great. So I think I'll start by just saying, kind of defining attachment, because a lot of us throw it around.
Perfect.
And
Yes.
you're like, and some people are like, well, what exactly is it? So I often love to say, at its simplest definition, it's an emotional bond between 2 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that attachment, when it was first studied, like so many things in my field, it was done back in the 40s and 50s, and it was done with animals. But then we looked and thought, wait a second, there's an innate bond with people. So they also say, like, attachment, not only is it this emotional bond, it's inborn in each one of us and literally kind of ensures our survival. Like saying we won't really survive on our own, right? We are kind of we're wired for these safe, intimate relationships.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks and theorists would say, and really, I mean, throughout the course of life, we form deep attachments with just a couple people, right? We form deep friendships, but in regards to this idea of an emotional bond that's lasting over time, I love to think of it as this sense of, hey, when the going gets tough, who's got my back? Who's there for me? Like, who can I reach out for help when I need it? And this idea that we all know life can throw us some curveballs and things can be scary. And who do I feel like is there for me, right? When I reach out and need help, or even if I don't always reach out based on my attachment style, because sometimes some of us are like, ooh, I'm too nervous to reach out. So attachment at basic definition, lasting emotional bond between 2 people. Now, we form attachments from the moment we're born. And as a matter of fact, attachment style, research with that would say there's 4 styles that are developed in our first, some people would say 2 to 3 years. Some might say, well, it's really up to 5 years. But point is,
Very
early years,
early.
from the moment we are born,
Yeah.
we start kind of engaging in what I call a dance of intimacy, right? And the dance of intimacy sets the stage for our attachment style and for our future relationships, right? For what we're going to do in our marriages 30 years later, even though we're only one at the time, right? So,
Which
so that's
sounds totally crazy, but
it. It
yeah,
does sound
it's true.
crazy. But you know
Yeah.
what's cool is that the research and the empirical studies say outside of our conscious awareness, our brain literally forms like a blueprint or a roadmap for how we're going to engage in relationships. So we learn, I mean, think about it. We learn in our, what I like to call our first love classroom, which is really just a fancy way to say family of origin.
Mhm.
But we learn in those early years, hey, when I cry, someone's going to come change my diaper or feed me. Or when I'm a toddler and I fall down and scrape my knee, somebody will come and comfort me. Not always perfectly, not always right away, but someone's there for me. So we internalize this sense of, I'm worthy of being
Mhm.
cared for, right? We
Yeah.
call it our internal working model in my field, but it's like
Mhm.
somebody loves me, somebody cares enough to come, right?
Yes.
And we also learn, oh, and others are helpful. Others, I can trust them. This relationship works. It's not always perfect. Sometimes the dance of intimacy is out of step, but oh, they come when I cry, and then I can trust them and value what they're going to say or do. So we learn that
Mhm.
outside of our conscious awareness, literally in our early months and years. And I guess this is when we could get into styles, because you could say, well, what if somebody didn't come?
Didn't come,
Like,
yeah.
which is where we get attachment styles. So research shows that 65% of us had a good enough dance in our early years, meaning when I cried, when I fell, you could just, when something bad happened, somebody came to comfort me. And I was like, ooh, I'm okay. And I learned I'm valued, I'm worthy to be cared for, and I can trust you as well. You're helpful, you're responsive. So 65% of us developed what we call a secure attachment style as a child. And believe it or not, therefore 65% of us are secure adults. Now you
Mm.
could be like, well, what about the other 35%, right?
Yes.
And then we see three different insecure attachment styles for the other 35%. And the first in childhood is what we call the insecure ambivalent style, which grows up to be kind of preoccupied adults. And these are folks who sometimes somebody came when you needed them, but other times you were left on your own, right? So you're
Mm.
not always sure. So I think this could be a first love classroom where maybe there was postpartum depression in the mom.
Yes.
So
Yes.
sometimes mom was right there doing the thing with you in the dance of intimacy. And other times mom wasn't well and dad was out working full time and it was just you. And so you were left of like, yikes, are you really there for me? Sometimes I trust you,
Mhm.
sometimes not so much. So as kids, we learned, I kind of want you, I need you, but I don't know if you're there for me. And that's
Mhm.
what we call the anxious, kind of ambivalent child. And we'll talk about what that looks like in adult relationships after I pause here. But let me describe the other two insecure styles. Because then the next one was the anxious avoidant. And these were kids who grew up in a home, in a first love classroom, where parents hopefully provided the basic needs, but really, emotionally, they just weren't present.
Yeah.
And the nanny was just the nanny. The nanny went home at the end of the work shift.
If
And
they had one, right?
if they had one, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. So these are homes where there was a little bit more neglect, like emotional
Mhm.
neglect, right? So
Mhm.
these kids kind of learned at a young age, ooh, well, work comes first, or they're not so well, or maybe there's alcoholism. So now they're really checked out, right? And they're just not available. So it was a take it or leave it attitude. And that little toddler, that little baby toddler and young child learned, you know what? I'm kind of on my own. It's more of a
Yeah.
leave it. So I'm going
Mhm.
to figure things out and
Mhm.
learn how to comfort myself and soothe myself, because more often than not, somebody doesn't come when I
Right.
cry and when I
Yeah.
need them. Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's the anxious avoidant that grows up to be a dismissive adult. And then the fourth style, which was added later on, it was when we actually saw pretty horrific abuse or neglect. Thankfully, that's a smaller percentage of insecure folks. We call that disorganized, disoriented. And these were kids, when we looked at them in the laboratories and the playrooms, I mean, they would kind of go, they would kind of flail to get down. They would become almost catatonic at times. They just had very little coping skills because there was the person who's supposed to care for you and love you actually is hurting you actively,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
there's more active abuse, maybe active neglect. So for styles, 65% secure, 35% of us kind of insecure attachment styles from our first love classroom.
I just want to focus on the 65% for a second because it almost, well, I'll just say, I think that parents do the best job they know how to do. And most try really hard to show up well. And sometimes it's still lacking, right? Uh, which, I mean, the truth is, all of us are imperfect.
Yes.
And as you said, those other three, there's definitely some situations that are far less than ideal. Um,
Yes.
but on the whole, there are so many parents doing the very best they know how to do.
Yes. And I guess what I'd say really quickly as an encouragement, especially for those who are young parents or parents of young children, is that we actually know in the first year of life, 70% of the dance of intimacy, right? So I do call it this dance. It's like
Yes,
how we learn about relationships. You
for
go, I
sure.
go, right? So
Yes.
70% of the dance of intimacy in the first year of life, so a newborn to 1 year old, is out of sync. In other words, so meaning, because if you're a parent of a 6 month old or 8 month old, they don't have words. They can't tell you. They're crying. You're exhausted. You're not sleeping well. You and your husband are trying to figure things out, right?
Yes.
And 70% of the dance is out of step. But what matters is it's a reparation, fancy way to say repair, right? So as long as, even if we're out of sync of like, oh, I'm trying to comfort my baby. I thought they wanted food, but I guess not. They have they want something else. They just want to be held. We don't always know. So we miss it at first. So we talk about connection, disconnection, reparation. It's what we do in our marriages, right? There's hopefully in the best of times connection, but anybody who's been married for more than 2 minutes knows
Amen.
disconnection happens, man, right? Honeymoon does not last forever,
All
right?
right.
So there's connection, there's disconnection. We get a little bit out of sync, a little bit like out of step, but then there's reparation, repair. So as long as we come back, and even to that 8 month old, we say, oh, honey, okay, I didn't know. Oh, it's that you have a dirty diaper or you just need to be held. They can't talk to us. So, but as long as we repair, that shows good enough. 65% of those folks will still have secure attachment of those little ones, right? Because the dance is out of step, but that's all right. We're going to repair and it's going to be okay.
Which I think is so encouraging to
Yes.
parents of littles right
Yeah.
now. And even with teenagers, I think it's a great word that this whole idea of connection, maybe there's disconnection and there's reparation, all of that actually goes into helping your child adjust in a healthy way and thrive and for your relationship to be healthy.
Yes, 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 and yes. And as a parent of two teenagers right now, let me tell you,
Hello.
sometimes I'm like, ooh, I don't want to do the repair work because you're just being a little bit bratty here, whatever it
Yes,
is, or too
yes,
sassy. But you
yes.
know what's super cool? Research shows when we repair with our children, right, whether they're toddlers or teenagers, and with our partners, and more so though when we think about parenting, but when we repair with our kids, it actually teaches them coping skills. And they learn like, oh, okay, things can be rocky and tumultuous and we can disagree, but we're still okay. I'm still deeply loved and valued by you, even if I messed up or you messed up or you failed me or mom or dad just lost their cool and got impatient because it was a long day at work and they came home and kids were pushing buttons. But as long as we repair, kids internalize coping skills and a sense of mastery, which is
Yes.
so cool because that's a part of learning emotional intelligence, right? So that's teaching them. So I love the research that speaks to that, that good enough is good enough. Like the
Yeah, not
dance,
perfection.
it's
We don't
not
have to be
perfection we're
perfect.
going for. No, none of
No.
us. Like, how can we do that? So as long as we're kind of not staying in that state of disconnection, or sometimes, and by the way, this is now for my newlyweds out there, in our early years of marriage, we sometimes go connection, disconnection, we skip repair, and we just think we can go back to connection. And over
Mm.
time, that gets dangerous because what we know newlyweds do is we make affordances. Affordances is just a fancy way of saying we kind of make an excuse. We're like, oh, you know what? He was just tired. That's why he kind of chewed my head off. Or
Oh,
she's just really like had a hard day at work and she hasn't been sleeping well. Or you know what? He's dealing with his mom who's aging right now. So I'm going to just forgive him for really yelling at me. So we kind of make these excuses for our partner when we're newlyweds, as opposed to saying, hey, babe, when you came in and you just kind of jumped down my throat about not having dinner ready, it was really not okay. I felt attacked. I felt, so instead of doing that, which would be the repair piece, we make affordances when we're newlyweds. We just kind of excuse the poor behavior of our partner. And over time, that gets dangerous because we must do the reparation, connection, disconnection, reparation. Like that third step is crucial because then we come back to connection stronger.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think about when you don't do the repair, when you just don't say anything, maybe you justify it. And at the same time, resentment can
Yeah.
start to build up and you can start to feel bitterness towards
Yes.
your spouse.
Yeah.
And boy, that'll really take you off to the races.
That's exactly right. Because when that does start building up, I mean, even if it's simmering, it then goes to boiling and boiling over. And that we know is so detrimental to us.
Hmm.
So being able to keep that in check. And one of the ways we do that is I always say we keep short accounts, right?
Right.
Which is, some of a shout out to John Gottman. But I also think as a person of faith, I'm told like, hey, don't let the sun go down on your anger.
Yeah.
And certainly in our intimate relationships, we shouldn't do that. Express it. Like say, hey, this hurt me. When this happened, I felt, this. Next time, can you be more mindful of the way you show up or the way you speak to me, especially in front of the kids or in front of the dinner party that we were hosting or whatever it is, right? So it's such a crucial piece in our marriage, in our parenting to have that repair, and it just builds healthier relationships.
Yes. So just let's think about the marriage aspect for a minute, because if you are in, let's say, the 65%, perhaps this idea of being able to connect and speak, the issue happens and repair, for some people, that is really, really scary, almost like walking on eggshells, because when I said anything in my home growing up, I regretted what I said because either pain followed it or I was just told to keep my mouth shut. So, how do we walk into a marriage relationship knowing we both grew up in two different homes?
Yes.
It is likely that we experienced different ways of dealing with conflict or even communicating, and
Yes.
the whole attachment piece is very real. So, how do you encourage couples when they come together and are in the early years of their marriage to walk this road in a healthy way, learning to dance together, if you will?
Yeah, no, it's such a great question, Julie. I mean, one of the first things that I encourage couples to do is actually to understand their first love classroom and have awareness of their caretaking history. So, in other words, have awareness of your attachment style because that impacts the way that you show up. So folks who are secure, who were secure children, for the most part, tend to show up in adult romantic relationships in their marriages. They tend to be open. They tend to be honest. They know they value themselves. I'm worthy of respect. I trust others, right? So we can do this dance and there can be freedom in it. But the problem is, a lot of times we then might meet somebody who doesn't have our same attachment style,
Hmm.
right? And somebody research then indicates, so if we were one of the insecure types, and let me just maybe explain how as adults it might look. If you grew up kind of more anxious,
Great.
ambivalent, as opposed to anxious avoidant, right? So the anxious ambivalent child was a little bit like, oh, sometimes you're there for me, sometimes you're not. I want you, I need you. So those folks grow up to be what we call preoccupied adults. And with preoccupied adults, we actually see they almost become emotionally clingy and needy towards their partner, so much
Mm.
so that their partner's like, you're a little bit too much. So instead of feeling real trust towards their partner, right, they often feel kind of emotional hunger. I want more. I need more. I look to my partner to kind of rescue or complete me, right? And they're
Mm.
seeking a sense of security, but they're doing it in a way that becomes too clingy. And their partner, if
Like
their partner
smothering.
mothering, right? They become demanding or they become possessive. So, and by the way, preoccupied adults in a marriage, all of a sudden they interpret independent actions by their partner as, see, he's got a life outside of me, or she's got a life. And it kind of validates their fear. Wait a second, they're having too much fun with their girlfriends or on that guy's trip. Like they might leave me because they're socializing more with friends. So any independent action by my partner, if I'm preoccupied, I become really worried. And I
Mm.
think, oh no, and I become more demanding, more possessive, more clingy, which unfortunately only pushes that
Yeah.
other partner away, right? So that's that anxious, ambivalent child who grows up to become a preoccupied adult. The anxious, avoidant child grows up to what we say is more of a dismissing adult, right? And these are adults who learned as kids kind of, you're kind of on your own. You got to figure out your emotions. You need to soothe yourself and comfort yourself. So these are adults who tend to be distant, independent, almost pseudo independent, kind of like, oh, I've got my life, I've got my work, I'll succeed at that. I don't really need you. They kind of pretend that they don't have emotional needs to get
Mm.
met.
Yeah.
And they are a little bit dismissive of close relationships, but really it's because they're psychologically defended and they're scared. So they shut down emotionally. They can turn off their feelings and they just won't react. So when the going gets tough in a marriage, the kind of avoidant, dismissive adult is just like, that's fine, we're done. I don't need you. Right? I mean, like, I'm all good. Should we think about like, that's fine, just do your own thing? They become kind of shut down. They kind of push you away. They go more distant. So, to your question of like, the first thing I think we need to do in our marriages is better understand our first love classroom, because believe it or not, that impacts the way we communicate, the way we engage in fights, the way when we all of a sudden feel a little bit vulnerable, how we engage in repair. And when we do the work around understanding our first love classroom, we just have more insight and we can become a change agent, right? And it's been so cool to do this in my clinical practice with couples, to just lay a strong foundation, whether it's a premarital couple or a couple that's been married 10, 20 years, to say, hey, let's look a little bit at your background. I'll never forget one husband came in and he's like, hey, Dr. G, I don't want to do any of this past stuff. I'm 50 something years old. Please don't ask me about my family of origin. And he was like this, 6'3", I don't know, like booming large man. I was like, what am I going to get beat up if I do something? It was so, and kind of was very adamant. And I said, well, I might not be the right psychologist for you, because I actually believe when you have awareness of your caretaking history, you will
Mhm.
show up in a more empowered way in your married life and you won't be
Yeah.
reactive. Right. And
Yeah.
so anyway, he warmed up to being like, we are going to do a little bit of background, So anyway, but I think that's the first step, Julie. I hope that kind of answers the question in a long way.
Yes, and I guess I would ask you as a follow-up, so if people are listening and they're like, "Oh, okay, well that is interesting and that makes sense." So what questions would you encourage us to ask each other in order to get some insight into what that looked like growing up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And this is where I would say, especially for the 35% who had a tougher time, who had a more kind of, more tumultuous home life, or a
Mhm.
non-normative event happened. Mom got really sick, or a cancer diagnosis, or there was divorce, and all of a sudden dad was there one day, gone the next. For those 35% who had something hard happen in their first love classroom, I would say, I'd actually encourage you to do it in a therapist office, because we have adult attachment interviews that we can go through to help you really talk through, oh, this is why I'm so scared to speak the truth. I'm afraid if I say
Mm.
that, they'll leave. They'll just,
Yeah.
I'll see the back of their head and they'll walk away. So you can, online get some versions of like
Mhm.
questions here and there for the
Mhm.
AAI, which is the adult attachment interview. But for the 35% who had a harder time, I would say do some work around it, like with a therapist. It's fun. I'll give a little plug to my book. I have questions. I got permission to put some of the adult attachment interview questions in. This is Reimagining Your Love Story. And I have the first 4 chapters are really about our first love classroom. At the end of every chapter, there's questions that you have to really think through. How were you comforted and soothed as a kid?
Yeah.
Who came when you got hurt? Did you actually receive comfort from them, even if they were well intended? What if there was a mismatch of temperament? Because we know that plays a part, right? So I think doing some of that work. So those are some questions to ask, but I would encourage, especially if there's a secure adult paired with somebody who's insecure, for there to actually be somebody who guides you along in that, because it can be painful to discover some ways in which you didn't actually internalize a sense of, I'm worthy of care and love, and somebody come
Mhm.
when I need.
Yes.
Because then you show up insecure in your marriage a little bit like, are you really there for me?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and I mean, I think that is just so good. One, encouraging people to seek out a professional who really knows what they're doing to help you on that journey. And secondly, I mean, I have talked to so many people who had that insecure attachment, and the way that they handled that was to make sure that they were doing things to actually know when the shoe was going to drop, because they just knew that
Yeah,
the shoe was going to drop at some point,
right.
and I don't want to be surprised, so I'll just do it myself. And they
Yes.
would create a ton of chaos, because at least I know
Hmm.
that it's gonna get crazy, even though this person is saying, "I love you. I am not going to leave you,
Yes.
and I am here for you."
Right. Right. Yes. No, Julie, so well said. And what's wild is that even though a person's saying that, I often say to my clients and when I'm doing workshops, hey, but one, our brain is a historical organ. And
Oh
so
boy.
it's not like, so in our amygdala, which is our emotional brain, it stores all the memories. So even though that might be said by our partner, if we have insecure attachment style, it's hard for us to really believe that, because we have our historical organ, our brain, who stored all these memories of like, really, I'm not so sure you're going to be there. Like you might just be gone one day or walk away, right? So
Or don't
research
trust
that.
that
That's
because
right. That's
you
right. Like
know it.
red alert, totally. And then
Right.
our body keeps the score as well. So between our brain being a historical organ, if something happened that was harder, research shows there are 2 things. Because when I do workshops on this, I have a lot of folks being like, okay, great. Well, this is discouraging that my attachment style from my first love classroom is with me 30 years later and impacts the way I show up in marriage. But we actually know, research shows there's 2 protective factors, or 2 things that help us overcome insecure attachment. One is curative, safe relationships, right?
Yes.
So, and we know that all of a sudden, if we've had an insecure attachment style, but we are in safe, curative relationships as young adults, and that can even be intimate friendships. As a person of faith, that can be with the God of the universe who says, I've got your back. I'm here for you. I will never leave or forsake you, right? So, curative, safe relationships. And the second thing that research shows that helps us overcome insecure attachment style is awareness of our own caretaking history. Do the
Yeah.
work. Look at
Yes.
the good, the bad, and the ugly. And guess what? Every single one of us, even if we have secure attachment, had some bad and ugly. So do the work around that, because when we do the work, we show up as a change agent and we're not as triggered by the things that maybe would have triggered us.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that makes me think about a whole lot of things, but I just, when you're saying all that, I'm sitting here thinking, but God,
hmm,
because it isn't the end of the conversation. You you can have experienced some really hard things. I mean, dark nights of the soul.
yes,
And God created us in such a way that we can take those experiences and acknowledge them and grow.
yes,
And I just think, isn't that, I mean, like, wow, what an amazing God to
amen.
create us in such a way that no, that's not your box.
Right.
You don't have to live in that forever.
That's
You
right.
can acknowledge that you experienced all of that,
Hmm.
and you can also learn to do different, to be different, to feel
Yes.
different. And you said, I mean, it takes time. It absolutely takes time, but wow.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, even as you were speaking, I was thinking yes and amen. And the idea of what we call in psychology the self-righting tendency, which
Mm.
is innate in each one of us because God knows we need it, but it's the ability to overcome. Right. So for those who had a harder first love classroom, for those who there was a non-normative event or there was mental health issues in a parent or divorce that was really messy, right? We know like the self-righting tendency is our ability as humans to overcome hardship. And it leads to resilience, right? At the end
That
of
was
the day.
exactly what
And
I was
God has
thinking.
created us to be
Yeah,
resilient, right? And to have this
yeah.
self-righting tendency, the desire to overcome and the skills to do so. So yes, yes, and amen. And the story's still being written. That's I often say that,
Right.
like the story is still being written and we have agency. Like God didn't create us to be robots. So we have agency in this as
Yeah,
well. And he says,
yeah,
yeah, I'm by your side. I will not leave or forsake you as you untangle your story, however messy it might have been.
yeah. Well, and I also love just the fact that we so clearly were not made to do life alone. We are absolutely made for connection. Relationship is important. It is, and even when it's complicated in marriage, because you have different attachment styles, that doesn't mean that you can't learn how to dance well together. And you said a few minutes ago, you look into your spouse to complete you. And I just think um, one of the glorious opportunities that we have is to understand that it is that vertical relationship with the Lord. That's what completes us.
That's exactly
And
right. Yeah, I always say in our earthly dances of intimacy, those we love the most will actually hurt the most and they'll hurt us the most. Like we
mm,
cannot look to them, right?
mhm,
To kind of rescue us, to complete us, but sometimes it's what we do. And we also have a culture that has so idealized, and hyped up romance that we actually forget mature love in a marriage is a deep attachment bond, right? It's that
yes.
sense of, as you said, Julie, like we were created for connection. I will never forget being at APA, American Psych Association, years ago, and this plenary speaker to thousands of psychologists was a neuroscientist. And he said, oh my gosh, we've had the coolest studies. He said, guess what? We cutting edge research shows the first and foremost instinct of every human being. It's not anger, it's not selfishness, it's not sex. He said it's comforting contact. It's comfort, contact, and connection. And I thought, I almost laughed because I thought, well, yes, we know this. Like the wisdom, as somebody who is a believer, the wisdom of the scriptures, it's like we are created for connection. We will not survive on our own. We
Yeah.
just won't, right? From cradle to grave, we need one another to survive. And by the way, all these studies now, all these cutting edge studies, the big Harvard study that's now approaching its 80th year, number one predictor of longevity and happiness is quality of intimate relationships. So marriage matters, intimacy matters, deep friendship, family relationships matter, right? And
Mhm,
literally sustain us and are predictive of happiness, health, and longevity. I mean, it's so
mhm.
clear. So we were created to connect.
Which makes me also know it's worth the effort and the work.
Yes. Yes. Because sometimes it doesn't always feel like that. Let's be honest.
No,
Like,
I
really,
mean,
you're
let's be
annoying
honest.
me.
Yeah. I mean, years in, you're like, wow. I think early on we just think, oh, this is just going to be so easy
Yeah.
because we get along so well. We talk about everything. We're in love, and it's just going to work.
Yeah.
And and then you see, oh, the reality is that we have to be really intentional.
Yes.
And the intentionality is so worth it
Yeah.
because of that deep, deep, intimate connection that we all deeply desire and want.
Yes. No, that's
You see.
exactly right. And I love that reminder of because sometimes, especially as we travel on and we're post the honeymoon, it feels like, oh my gosh, really? Just I'm annoyed by this or you're too much or who knows what, but it's so worth it. I think
Yeah.
honestly it's one of the most loving intimate relationships are the most important thing we will do. this side of heaven, as far as I'm concerned. It's what grows us. It challenges us. It holds a kind of mirror up to us, and we see our own selfishness and pride in all the things. But at the end of the day, it's what actually shelters us from the storm, and it makes us stronger,
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
good words. Good words. Okay. I ask every guest this
Ooh.
question.
Okay.
What would you encourage couples to do on the daily that can have a significant impact on their marriage?
I love that. And I love that question. It's so practical. And there'd be lots of things, but I'll name one, which I
Okay.
think is being so mindful of how you essentially say hello and how you say goodbye. So your greetings and your departure on the daily matter. Meaning, and I had to remind myself of this when our girls were young and I was racing out the door to teach a class or to see an 8 a.m. client, to actually look your spouse in the eye, right? And often I say giving a hug and looking him in the eye and saying, have a great day, babe. Love you. See you later. Quick kiss, right? You choose, but some sort of departure and then some sort of greeting when you come back in, face to face, eye contact, ideally involving physical touch. It matters so much, right? And so whether that's, and even first thing in the morning and then before you go to bed, that I think you could extend it to that, right? To your point of like the
Yeah.
interconnectedness and what that looks like. I know you've spoken a lot about that, but certainly the comings and goings, eye contact, physical presence, and ideally touch. 7 to 9 seconds. I do not need to add to anybody's day. And I remember thinking when my kids were little, and sometimes they'd meet me at the back door, and then the puppy would run to the back door, and my husband could be like the last one. And sometimes I would just forget. And I was like, oh, no, wait a second. This is really important to come back together, to look at him, give him a quick kiss and a hug. So
Yes.
that matters. And I would totally encourage people and challenge them to do that on the daily.
That's a great word, and I thank you so much for sharing with us today. This has been fantastic information. Thank you all for listening. Lots of things that we can apply to our marriage to help it to grow. We'll definitely have Andrea's book in the show notes and other resources. You can find them at marriageonthedaily.com. Also receive updates there. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to share this with your friends. This is such great information that can make a dramatic difference in people's lives. So share it with your friends. Tell everybody you know. I'd be grateful. It'll help us grow. And until next time, remember, it's the little things that matter on the daily in your marriage.